Hey everybody, good morning. Hope you're doing well. I was talking with a customer about the possibility of using rail to transport some of their goods. And I've spent some time, handling this mode in my past life. I was actually very fortunate where a couple months ago I had the chance to go down to Washington, D.C. and speak in front of the Surface Transportation Board about rail growth in this country. So I want to give you an overview of how it works and just some of the pros and cons of shipping rail, okay? So I'm going to give you two models for how rail works. The first one is I'm going to show you how intermodal works, okay? And the second one I'll show you is, a lot of times you might be driving, let's just say out in the Midwest, right? And you see all these rail cars lined up in these rural areas near these agricultural locations or agricultural facilities, right? You might see these grain hoppers where they come into these locations, they have these silos and they drop grain into the car, okay, agricultural products. You might be driving down a highway and you see an oil refinery and you might see a long line of rail cars at an oil refinery. So again, they're loading up those cars with whatever type of chemicals. So let's just start first with the intermodal piece and how this works, okay? So you have a warehouse here, okay, that has product. And what they will do is they'll ship it and they'll have a carrier come and pick up. And what they're called is, the technical term is a drayage carrier, right? Where they come in with a intermodal container on a trailer, right? And my drawing is not going to be good, but hopefully you get the point, okay? So here's your intermodal container. It's sitting on a chassis, okay? And here's your truck. Yeah, that's a horrible truck, but that's hooked up, okay? It then will take it to a rail yard, okay? And it'll drop this chassis with the container on it in the rail yard, right? And then once it's in the rail yard, what the railroad companies will do, they will take the containers off the chassis and load them onto the trains. And then the chassis will stay in the yard for other carriers to pick up and bring more containers into the yard, okay? Gets in here, loads onto the train leaves, okay? Comes into another train yard, okay? Takes all these containers off and leaves it in the yard and puts it on chassis, okay? So now you have your shipping container again here. And again, I know my drawings aren't the best, but hopefully you get the picture that I'm making, okay? Puts it on the chassis, hooks it up to a truck, and then the truck, what they will do is they'll bring it back or to the final destination to your customer's location, okay? And that's pretty much how intermodal works, okay? Then you have the other model, and again, I'll keep this pretty simple, where you will have, let's see if I could. So let's assume this is a silo, okay, at a agricultural facility, a farm, right? And in there you have all this is all grain, right? And somehow, some way, right, you have these railroad tracks that run along here. Train pulls up, they dump the grain into the grain hoppers or whatever, and the train just goes on its way, however it delivers, okay? And so these are the two models and how they work. Same thing, then this train will come into another facility to unload the grain, right? It could be another warehouse along the tracks. It could be a rail yard where they unhook that train, they move it off to the side, and they have a way to drain the grain, I guess for lack of a better term, out of that car and take it where it needs to go. So, but typically what you'll find is intermodal is great for these customers that have maybe one or two shipments, okay, per week where they can put on the rail, all right? Whereas this, if you think about some of these agricultural suppliers, if you think about some of these chemical companies, they have massive amounts of product they have to ship. And they're able to benefit of what we call unit trains or carloads, where they have so much product they can basically dedicate an entire train to what they're hauling. They have so much product they can dedicate a couple carloads to the train, so they can get better discounts. But nonetheless, intermodal, this market competes with truck. And depending where the market is, right, if intermodal is cheaper than truck, it's a good alternative, but there's also some drawbacks you need to consider. So when you think about that, okay, what are some of the pros and the cons? Let's just clean this up a little bit. Okay, so we know with rail, right, it's environmentally friendly. And the reason it's environmental friendly is it's using less fuel. So you have one locomotive, let's maybe say 2 locomotives, depending on the train, pulling hundreds of cars, okay? So how many trailers is that taking off the road? A significant amount. That's another benefit. So you're reducing traffic congestion, okay? So 2 real benefits. And I mean, also, if you think about it, right, there's a potential for savings, okay? Now, the biggest drawback with rail, and this is what I have seen, and I actually talked about this, right, in my presentation, where it's the ability to service, okay? So a lot of these railroad companies, these Class 1 railroads, they're looking to grow, okay? But the reality is they have challenges with labor. And for those of you who don't know, most of the individuals that work in the railroads, okay, the ones that operate the trains that are in the rail yards, they're union employees. Hardworking people, good people, but every 5 years or every X number of years, they have to go into contract negotiations. And sometimes that can get sticky, right? So you run the risk of, if you're a large shipper and you're giving an amount of volume, or even if you're a small shipper and you're giving 2 intermodal shipments a week, if there's a threat of a strike, now all of a sudden you have to be prepared. How are you going to find another alternative to move your product? You're going to have to go to truck. And depending where that market is or how it's doing, if it's a tight market, you're probably going to have to pay more for truck transport than you would shipping via rail, okay? So that's one downside. The other challenges is, when you have weather delays, okay, in the Midwest in the wintertime, you have snow, there's going to be delays. And I would argue the same thing. If there's snow in the Midwest, interstates are going to be shut down. So it's not that it's just isolated to rail, right? You're going to have the same challenges with truck. But one of the knocks, or one of the critiques, if you will, of rail is where they've had concerns where shippers can't get straight answers as far as, where is the rail car? When is it going to get to the terminal? When can I give my customer an ETA? Versus if you're calling a truckload carrier, and majority it's an owner-operator, the guy driving the truck is the business owner. Hey, Mr. Smith, where is the truck? I'm in Omaha, Nebraska. Roads are shut down. They're probably going to be shut down for about 2 days. I'm anticipating getting there in about 4 days. This is what you can tell your customer. Whereas the rail, there's been some challenges there, right? Trying to understand where all these shipments are. Now, the rail, I have seen where they do work and they have technology where they can give EDI updates where the rail car is in transit, okay? I've seen things where at Rail Hub in Seattle or at Rail Hub in Harrisburg, and all that simply means is it's pulled into a major rail yard, the car is there, it could be being prepared to put on a new train to go to another location, it could just be sitting there for whatever reason, but that's the data they're giving you. So they do offer some information. It's not as if, you're completely blind, but if you're trying to get really granular and understand where that train is or when it's going to arrive, it can be tough. So I hope this kind of gives you an idea of the rails, how it works, some of the benefits, some of the drawbacks that you need to consider. But overall, I've introduced it to many clients in my career. I've had success with it. It really comes down to preparation, communication, and having an alternative plan, or a plan B, if you will, in case something goes wrong. So hope you like this. Don't forget to subscribe, and have a great day, guys.